evening. I am excited about tonight. I am glad that you guys are here. Valerie has joined, and she is going to be the guest speaker for tonight. So, as soon as Valerie comes on, Valerie, I need you to ask. Okay, there you go. Perfect. Good evening, Valerie. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am good. Thank you.
I am extremely excited. We've talked today. We've talked over the last couple of days,
Yes.
and it's amazing how we'll plan to do something, and as we're planning it, things will begin to shift,
Yes.
and that we have to be open to what God is doing and how He's doing it. And so, good evening, woman of God, Minister Vincent. So, originally, the title of tonight topic was identifying domestic violence and the verbal knee, emotional knee that's on your neck. And so I reached out to Valerie and said that I wanted to change the topic and drop domestic violence. And the reason why I wanted to drop domestic violence, I didn't want people to assume because it said domestic violence that it was not pertaining to them. And a lot of times we'll see one part of something and we will assume that it's not pertaining to us. And that's not actually true. When we talk about domestic violence, we're talking about what takes place in a home. And though domestic violence takes place in a home, there is 19 different forms of domestic abuse. And under that, one of them is emotional. And as I began to dive deeper with the word emotional and abuse, I began to realize though it may take place in home, it actually takes place outside of the home. As I began to identify that it takes place in our community, it takes place in our school, it takes place in our friendships, it takes place in relationships, it takes place on the job, it takes place in the church. And so when we begin to discuss emotional abuse, I want you to look careful at what we're talking about. And even if it does not pertain to you, I want you to begin to identify people in your life that it may pertain to. And so, if you guys can start sending the hearts and invite people to join, I'm going to do a brief introduction about Valerie. Valerie was one of our speakers. So, Valerie is back to join us again. And though we are going to touch on domestic abuse, we're going to go deeper with emotional abuse. So, Valerie was in a domestic relationship. She is a mother. She is a entrepreneur. She is a woman of God. She works as well as being an entrepreneur. She is also an author. She is a speaker. She is a friend, and she's most known as an encourager. She is currently working on her master degree. And so, what I like about Valerie, because our story goes back to our childhood, like we went to school together, but she was friends with my younger sister. And over the years, Valerie and I have developed our own relationship, and it's been precious. And so, one of the reasons why I have Valerie on is she is totally transparent. She has went through the process. She is a woman of God. She has stood in faith for her own marriage and what she went through. And in the midst of everything that she was going through, she continued to encourage. And that inspired me to a level that very few can do. It's one thing to encourage somebody when you're not going through and you feel like you're on top of the world, but to be in a situation and not know when it's going to end or exactly how it's going to end, and from that place continue to encourage and continue to give people the word of God that you're giving to yourself. To me, that was huge. So, Vala, we know like who you are as a person, but I want you to kind of tell us what you do as a coach who works with people who are in domestic violence relationships.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you. And I just have to say this. I appreciate everything you just said. I am really humbled. I did complete my master's. I'm working on my health and wellness, holistic health and wellness certification. Just put that out there. Because I believe in healing mind, body, soul, and spirit
Yes.
all together. So currently, again, Latanya gave everything, and I thank you for that. So when I work with women, I want to help them dismantle the lies, especially women who have been in domestic violence relationships. We tend to take on the lies passed down to us from our parents, and unknowingly, and sometimes taking on the lies just given to us through society. Whether that is like I'm not able to be financially free, or I can't make it on my own. I am not capable of raising my children by myself. And I'm saying these things because sometimes when we are in something that is not healthy, we
Yeah.
tend to stay there.
Mm.
And again, it comes from lies, or because I seen my mother and my father go through something, then I have to do the same thing. And I believe that that is not true. So dismantling the lies, like what are the stories we tell ourselves? So
Yes.
that is my heart and my target as far as helping women dismantle your lies so that you can own the truth. The truth is you can. The truth is you are able. The truth is you
Yeah.
have the capacity to. The truth is you are capable. The truth is you can rise. So whatever's positive, believe that and move forward so that God can use you for his purpose. That's where I am today. That's how I feel. So amen. Thank you.
Thank you. So, can you talk a little bit about domestic abuse? In the event that someone is on now or is going to come back and watch the replay, can we talk a little about domestic abuse and what domestic abuse is before we even dive deep into emotional abuse?
Okay, so domestic abuse is usually any form of violence that's taking place in the home, and with two people, usually the abuser and the abused, usually a romantic relationship. And it can be physical, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, verbally. Domestic violence is a pattern of behaviors used by one partner to usually maintain power and control over another partner. Um, there's no discrimination as it relates to race, religion, gender, or socioeconomic status. And relating to just a little bit about my background, and again, Latanya gave a description. When you're in it, sometimes you don't know that you're in it. Again,
Mm.
because it's familiar, because you've witnessed family members, so it becomes your normal. and and I am transparent. So with me and my husband, there were things that I noticed in
Okay.
the relationship. It was like a cycle. So it could be the today is great, tomorrow is bad. Today, the next day is great, the next day is bad. And that could be in the form of, again, verbal, emotional, psychological, mental. And it could be physical, depending on, the situation. And it affects the parents, of course, but the children are there, the children see everything, so the children are affected. And the you have to understand, when something's not right, but often when we're in these types of relationships, we ignore the signs.
Yes.
And it could be that one where you could ask a question and the question escalates, and
Mm.
you might have said, "Is it sunny outside?" That turns into an argument, and you're like, "Well, gee, I just asked a question," or you asked a question and it goes from zero to 100. It could be where you get yelled at. It could be where you're getting put down,
Mm.
and someone can be physical. And so it's not okay, because in a relationship, it should be healthy. It should be loving. Two people should be supportive of one
Yeah.
another. And I want to say this because often people in domestic violence relationships um, find it not easy to get out of, because it's like a tangled web, if you will, like a spider web. And sometime there's fear, and again, there's fear because you may not be financially able. There's fear because of maybe what church members have said. There's fear because of what your families have said. There's fear because you've married someone and you think, well, this is what a marriage is supposed to be. Well, that's not true. And I want to just share this because I did make a choice to divorce. I made a choice to divorce and leave. And as a woman who became educated about domestic violence, I made a choice to come back to the relationship. And I share this because we are both currently working it out. and that's my truth, and I'm okay with that, because there are people who will stay and there are people who will leave, but no matter what, the process of healing is necessary.
Yes.
Recognizing it recognizing it and not saying that it's not happening, recognizing it and not being in denial, recognizing it and making a choice
Mm.
to say we're going to work this out or we're not, because depending on the type of relationship it is, it may not be able to be worked out.
That is good. And as you're talking, and we're talking about domestic abuse, and we've already on a previous one talked about verbal abuse, and tonight we're going to talk about emotional abuse. And
Right.
I think that it's important, or is it safe to say that you could be in a domestic relationship and it be physical, and though they may not say any, they may not do anything mentally or emotionally because you have physically been abused, it still can have an impact on you mentally and emotionally because of what you have experienced, even though the person may not have said anything um, to mess with you mentally or said anything to hurt you emotionally. The fact that you're in a relationship that is not healthy is going to impact you in other areas of your life.
Absolutely, because when we think about the reality is, emotions are key, right?
Yes.
Emotions, like we all show emotions all throughout our lives, right?
Mhm.
So with whatever type of relationship you're in, if someone hits you, and they may not be the type that calls you out of your name, that makes a derogatory statement about you, you're going to become emotional because now you're feeling emotionally disconnected.
Yes.
Number one, right?
Yes.
And then I just want to read this definition of emotions: a natural instinctive state of mind deriving from one's circumstances, mood, or relationships with others. So if it's not right, you're going to feel like your emotions are going to show up.
Yes.
Um, and honestly, I think with with these relationships, they overlap as far as what type of violence is in the relationships, or domestic violence, right?
Yes.
Because they may hit you, and again, may not call you out of your name, but 9 times out of 10 they probably would. So they kind of overlap. And
And
I just think sometimes people are not aware of everything that they're going through in the relationships, because it's a lot that's taken out of you. When it comes to emotions, you're depressed, you're not even necessarily there. And when I say that, like, mentally, right?
Mhm.
Because sometimes you check out depending on the type of abuse you're going through.
Yes.
So emotionally you're checked out, mentally you're checked out.
Yes. And the reason why I asked that question is I can remember over the years where it may have been um, visible, the physical abuse,
Right.
but when you try to bring up you're being verbally or emotionally abused, because they felt like it wasn't like he's not cussing me out, but maybe he's raising his voice.
Right.
He's not doing certain things, so they discounted what was happening and the result of what was happening based off what the person was doing. And so I
Right.
felt like it was important to mention, just because they're not, doing something emotionally to make you nervous or uncomfortable, it doesn't mean because of the way they're talking to you or because they physically put their hands on you that you are emotional, that you're not in a healthy state, that you're experiencing emotions and feelings that are not natural, that you're triggered by certain things. And
Right.
one of the things that we've talked about offline, Valerie, is that I can remember as a kid, right? So I'm talking about junior high, high school,
Right.
where there were people who were already in unhealthy relationships, whether it was verbally, mentally, emotionally, physically, and sad to say, even sexually.
Right.
And these were relationships that took place outside the home because they were visible to the classmates and the friends.
Right.
And as I look back, because I didn't understand it, it's not something that we talked about as kids. It's not a subject. And so we knew it wasn't right, but we didn't know how to address it. We didn't know that, like, we knew it wasn't normal, but we didn't know, like, where does this behavior come from? Like,
Right.
what is the root cause of it? And then what do we do with this information? Because as kids, you're told, mind your business, mind your business. I don't have nothing to do with you.
Right.
And so when I look back at certain people, right, and I'm not saying that they were friends, there were people that were enrolled in the same school. There were people that I was able to see from either near or far, and they had already at a young age entered into a relationship that wasn't healthy. So
Right.
whether it was with a young man or a friend. And so the reason why we shifted the subject again tonight is because we want you to begin to identify if you are in a emotional relationship, a relationship that makes you feel drained, a relationship that makes you feel uncomfortable, a relationship that makes you feel like you're not valued, you're not respected, any relationship that you dread entering into or being around a person. And oftentimes
Mm.
we make excuses for them, and we say things like, that's just how they are.
Right.
And so, Valerie, let's talk about emotional abuse, right?
Right.
And when we talk about emotional abuse, you can go in the direction of a home, or you can go in any direction that you're led to talk about what you have observed, um, the relationship with it. So it doesn't have to be emotional abuse tied to a marriage, tied to someone dating. It could be in any area of our life. And if you could kind of elaborate like what you experienced and how it made you feel.
Thank you. Yes. So, emotion, and just to again, the definition, emotional abuse, verbal abuse falls under that. There's rejection, there's put downs, causing fear, isolation, bullying, intimidation. So, what I recall, it's funny that as we did discuss this, being a child and just being around people sometime. And
Okay.
I have always been very, I guess, reserved. So, and I think because of what I've come from. So I remember being, sometime around people and hearing lots of profanity
Mhm.
or bullying or name calling, right?
Yes.
And loud and talking about someone maybe in the group that I was in. And I remember feeling some kind of way, but not connecting that to emotional abuse because it is. Because not only are you attacking my friend or attacking someone in public, but you're exposing me to it. So now I'm being emotionally abused indirectly, right? And I
Yes.
think that it happens a lot with our children who come from domestic violence, right? Because again, it's in the house. So when they go outside, when they go to school, when they go to the movie theaters, whatever, they tend to show up differently because they've internalized all of this stuff. So now it has to come out. And
Yeah.
it comes out through the name calling, through the
Mhm.
bullying, and we've all seen it. But I think that sometimes as a child, you don't know what that is. And even in the relationships, I remember seeing people who were dating and again, not even understanding, but knowing something wasn't right. People being physically aggressive with one another. And first of all, they were too young to be dating anyway. um,
Oh.
but just putting hands on. And I don't remember any blood or anything, but it's the fact of you're touching me aggressively. I remember seeing that as a child with other people, but not even knowing what to do with it. But I knew it wasn't
Mhm.
right. And I think that a lot of our children experience that, but don't know who to talk to, don't know is this right or wrong, because some often are the kids that are seeing it, like me, that's what I came from. But I
Mhm.
knew it wasn't right. So it wasn't something I was going to, but it wasn't something I was going to take home and say, hey, mom, so and so was at school and they were arguing, they were having a fight, or somebody was bullying. Like, I didn't talk to my mother about that.
Right. And I didn't either. As we're talking, if you can, I know we're all adults, but think back to your childhood. Um, and if you experienced or was exposed to any type of abuse outside of the home, so whether it was a friendship, whether it was a community, whether it was in the classroom, whether it was someone you were dating, if you could just put like yes and what type of abuse it was. The reason why I want to go a little deeper with this is I'm constantly hearing and being exposed to children who may be now adults, so just turning 18, who started experiencing the abuse at the early age of 13. And though you may say, my child is fine, our house is healthy, you know, I want you to keep in mind that oftentimes you're not exposed in the house, you're exposed outside the house. So if you've ever had a friend or dated someone and you were under 18 and they wasn't healthy, imagine the impact they have or could have had on you. And so, though we can protect our children at home, we need to prepare them and protect them to a certain degree when they're not at home. And so, it's important that we understand the different types of abuse, what the definitions are, what the warning signs are, and how to have these conversations with our children at an early age.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to ask you guys this question, and if you can identify, I want you to say, give me a number one so I can remember what kind the questions I'm asking. So, if you can remember as a little kid, as early as the age of 5, playing with someone in the neighborhood, your cousins, your siblings, and someone getting mad and telling you to not be their friend.
Mm.
And because you wanted that person to be your friend, you listened to them and turned your back on someone else, not even thinking like, what emotions am I causing to have in this person, and emotionally what am I going through to not be friends or to be rude to someone based off what someone else says and not what they did. So if you have ever had a friend at a young age who told you not to be friends with somebody because of what they were going through and had nothing to do with you,
Right.
if you could put one, okay, I'm going to put one because it's happened to me as a little
Right.
kid. It happened to me in elementary. It happened to me in junior high. And in high school, you knew if you was friends with certain people, then, depending on who it was, then all of the other friends stopped hanging out with you. And you couldn't speak to the person until the person who had originally put the assignment out said it was okay. And so you had to make a choice. Do I lose all of my so-called friends, or do I hold on to the one everyone's mad at? Right. So I'm saying this because I want us to really understand what emotional abuse is and how young it starts. Valerie, can you recall any relationships that you had? Um, let's
Yes.
friendships.
Yes. It's funny because this is so good because as you were speaking, like we don't again, we don't think about that as emotional abuse, but it's rejection. I totally remember standing it was elementary school, standing on the playground looking dumbfounded because I was like, well, who am I going to play with? Cuz she don't want to play with me. I can't play with her. I remember that. And that is rejection. And it makes you feel isolated and it makes you feel like, what's wrong with me? Kids do that all the
Mhm.
time. And the funny thing is, because again, whatever my parents were going through, I was not the child at school that was the bully. I was the child that wanted to be friends with everyone, but on occasions was the child that was left to play with herself.
Mhm.
And I remember that as far as elementary school, which, yeah, at least the third or fourth grade, probably the third for sure. And it may have been earlier than that because that's usually what kids do. They'll start isolating and that's rejection.
Mm,
And it didn't feel good. But again, who knew that it was emotional abuse, right?
right. I mean, who knew? Um,
Right.
and just the pressure. So I don't know if this happened to you in high school. I'm a little older than you, just a little.
Yeah, just
Um, I remember being in high school and we had off campus lunch.
right.
And I remember that if you wanted to go, let's say if I wanted to go to Jack in the Box and somebody wanted to go to McDonald's, all of a sudden you're angry, you yelling at me and all this other stuff simply because I don't want to go to McDonald's. Like like you felt like you had the right to control where I went, right?
Wow.
Um, or if you didn't want to go to the football game or to the basketball game, or if you didn't want to walk a certain way, or if you didn't want to go by the store, I had people who would become emotionally and began to abuse me and began to get upset and began to act like in a rage because they didn't have control. And it was, and I remember sometimes just giving in because I felt
Mm.
like the fight wasn't worth it.
Right.
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 Um, the fact that we would cause this big scene, the fact that it could mean that I would lose half of my friends for a week or two because you were upset. And so it was just, and then I remember people saying that's just who they are, that's just what they do, right? And so it was kind of like, where's this coming from?
Right.
And so, and that's the thing for us to be aware of. Whenever someone says that's just who they are, or that's just how they are, that's a red flag because people
Right.
will do better when you hold them accountable. So never accept that that's the way that someone is, because people, when they want something different, they'll get the professional help that they need to do it.
That's big. Right. That's it. Professional help. But again, when you're a child and you're in school, you're not even 9 times out of 10, you're not even thinking about, something ain't right, but you're not even thinking like this is a form of abuse.
Mm-hmm.
This person doesn't make you feel good, but yet we continue to
Yeah.
run to them, or maybe, or how about this? We continue to be around them because we all want to be accepted. We all want to be liked, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's not okay. It's not healthy. And yes, we make excuses and we downplay their actions, and they just keep doing it, never being held accountable.
So with that, right, with abuse in general, um, I find it hard to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, not so much now, but when I was actually in it, or even when I talked about it, to share the depth of it,
Right.
right?
Right.
So it's one thing to say I'm in a abusive relationship. It's something else to say that I'm physically being hit, right?
Mm,
It's something else to show the bruises on your body, right?
right.
It's something to a whole nother level to say that I am in a abusive relationship where I'm physically hit, and I've been in this relationship for a year. And not only am I physically hit, or let me define to you what physically hit means. It means that I'm greeted when I walk through the door with a fist to my face.
Mm,
It means that I'm dragged through the house, or I'm kicked, or I'm spit, or I'm punched. Like, we say things, but we don't go into depth about it, right?
right.
Because to go deeper, it requires you to be transparent. Different emotions come up, right? So it's one thing for me to say, I am in a verbal abusive relationship. But for me to say what was verbally said and the tone,
Right.
what would be your advice, encouragement for someone who has experienced emotional abuse on how to deal with the guilt, the shame that's tied to it?
Mm,
That I've allowed someone to talk to me this way, that I've allowed someone to treat me this way, that I've allowed someone to manipulate me, that I've allowed someone to control me. Like, what would be your advice to that person?
wow, that's big. That's good. So the reality is, if people are ashamed, that's number one, right? When you're
Mhm.
going through this, you're ashamed because you think you're the only one. So again, you're not the only one. And own your truth. It's happening. Um, my advice would be to stand in your truth. If you know it's not right and you feel that it's not right, that's your truth.
Mm,
And it's okay. We have to recognize it for what it is. You have to know that you deserve better. And I believe once you believe that you deserve better for yourself, that's when
mm,
better happens.
that's good.
Your mindset has to shift. And I speak from my experience because again, I couldn't keep pointing the finger at him.
Okay.
I had to turn inward and say, what's going on with you, Valerie?
That's good. Go ahead.
Because it wasn't just him.
Mm-hmm.
It takes two to tango, right?
Okay.
So I had to, as you said last week, I had to identify the cracks in Valerie.
Okay.
And I had to ask God to show me, how do I heal?
Mm.
How
That,
do I heal? Because
yes.
the reality is someone could call you names, but when you know who you are, suddenly those names don't affect you.
Yes.
But when you're in a position where you don't know who you are, you feel the need to retaliate. You feel the need
Yes.
to defend yourself. But when you know who you are, suddenly you don't have to do any of that
Mm.
because you know who you are. So I think that people cannot be in denial. Like, it is what it is. This is happening all over. And again, it's not just happening in your romantic relationship. It's happening at your job because
Yes.
people talk to you crazy there too. Sometimes, let's be
Mm-hmm.
real, right? It
Yep.
happens at work and we think, oh, that's my supervisor or that's the manager. I can't speak up. Yeah, you can. You can speak up and you can
Yes.
actually pack your things up and go to another job. Like you got to believe it. And find someone, and I believe that God always puts someone in our lives that we can really confide in, because a lot
Yes.
of people don't understand. Because again, you mentioned being, like, oh, what if you're in a relationship for a year? So the most people would be like, well, why did you say, how come you didn't leave? Well, again, it's not that easy because you have invested with this person. And again, it's a relationship, whether it's with your husband, your wife, your boss, right?
Yes.
And sometimes it's a family member, right? It could be your parent, it could be a sibling. um that's your truth, but you have to say, this is what it is,
Yes.
and this is not okay for me. And then you have to pray and seek. I feel like you got to seek God's word for your life and say, okay, what, I'm here, but this is not how I'm going to spend the rest of my life. And I
Yes.
believe when you say that, like, God begins to pour in you, God begins to speak to you, God begins to put people in your path who may be able to help you if you're in a place where you can't go inward and help yourself. Because that's again, it's up to you to heal, because that person may still be that person,
Yep.
but you can change.
That's good. And then Valerie, because we've had so many conversations, and you said something very key, that in your marriage, you were oftentimes the abuser, right?
Physical, yes.
The
Well,
physical.
yes.
Yeah.
I was
And
definitely
so
physical.
the reason why I put that out there is because you touched on it. Oftentimes when we are being abused, we make it about us,
Right.
when in actuality it's really not about us.
Right.
It's about the abuser and what's going on inside of them.
Right.
Would you say that that's correct? So that
Yeah, God, yes, God revealed something. Yeah, for sure.
okay.
Um, and what, for me, when I would lash out,
Okay.
because literally I did, um, God revealed to me the rage that was on the inside of me. And
Mm,
it was rage. It was rage. Because not only, and not every time, but when I did, I was definitely blessed that he didn't hit me back. Let's be real, because he probably, could have hurt me. Um, and I'm very grateful for that. But it was my anger and it was my rage that I had carried from childhood.
ooh.
And it only came out in the marriage, because I didn't fight at school. You know what I mean? I didn't get into altercations at school, but it came out in my marriage. And what God showed me was, it was like a silent rage on the inside of me. And I don't know if people remember that movie. I think it was called The Burning Bed. Farrah Fawcett. And I believe she was in an abusive relationship. And then by the time it was all said and done, I believe she burnt him in the bed or something like that, right? She went to
Okay.
jail. So I'm saying all that to say, I'm thankful that God showed me the rage on the inside of me. So I knew the direction I needed to go to heal. And I knew that it was never okay to hit. Like, it's not okay to hit. Not only was I hurting myself, but I was hurting my husband and my children.
Wow.
because whether they've seen it or not, it changes the atmosphere in the home.
Okay. So someone posted it was the burning bed. So
Right.
you said when you said it, like, I'm visual. I'm very visual. So if we have any fighters on here, like if you seen somebody, like when they reached back, like you knew they was coming to do damage, knock them out, it was gonna be a KO, right? And when you said I reached back to my childhood, when you think about the speed that you had to go, like you were moving in to like reach back and like let's just say that you started like at 7, right? So from
Right.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, like all of that anger building up, coming
Right.
at a person, um, that would explain how people can go from 0 to 100. And
Right.
when you said you went back to your childhood, your husband wasn't a part of your childhood, which meant it had nothing to do with him, but
Right.
everything to do with your past. And I'm
Right.
going to say unresolved issues that
That's
were
it.
now showing up.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And it's a blessing to recognize that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we know, and this is the beautiful part about life and relationships, because God will put you with the person that you need to be with, I believe, to it's a reflection, right? It's a mirror, because as you said that, what I began to do in my life, I began to investigate his childhood.
Mm.
Because he I had to investigate it, and I was like, oh, well, we kind of come from the same thing. No wonder.
Mm. That's
No
good.
wonder. Right. Right. Because that was the truth. It was the truth. And it boils down to emotions, right? Emotions
Yes.
that need to be tamed. They need to be healed. They need to be released. They need to be settled.
I don't know if you've ever said this or experienced this. And if you guys that are on, whether you're on now or watching the replay, we're going to do a number 2. Have you ever met somebody and you felt like, where there was a person, like, let's just say you met a friend, right? Like a literal friend. And it felt like there was a connection. It felt like you knew
Mm,
them. It felt like it's crazy. It seemed like we've known each other all our lives. We have so much in common. Or you met someone that you were dating and you was like, oh, he's perfect. He gets me, he understands me. It seems that way, right?
right.
Could it be that it's a spirit that has connected and is familiar?
Ooh, that's good. Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is my husband had lung cancer before he passed. And it was this cough, right? And I had heard the cough for so long that literally I said, if I hear the cough, I could tell you if you had lung cancer. And I wasn't just saying that. People who had also been in a relationship and had watched someone go through this process of lung cancer and had heard it was a certain type of cough, but you had heard it for so long, you could identify the cough and know that they had lung cancer.
Mm,
And I'm saying that to say that I've also been in the hospital and I've been there when someone's got bad news and when someone has passed away. It's a different type of holler, like a different type of scream. And it's only because I had already went through it. And because I was familiar with it, when I heard it, I could identify it. And
mm.
so, as we're starting to connect with people on a deeper level, especially when we're not exchanging words or we're not having an in depth conversation and there's a connection, you will need to see what spirit or what have you guys gone through that are the same, and that hurt, that pain, that story is connected on a deeper level.
That's good. That's
Because
true.
it's real. It is
Hmm.
real. Like anybody who has went through something, you don't have to say anything. Like they get it, they understand, and it's almost like they communicate without ever saying words.
Right.
Yeah. So please. And so I've also had friends that we didn't talk. We talked about what we felt comfortable sharing, but as adults, we talked about how dysfunctional our lives was. And it was like we would have never knew. And it was like, well, that explained why we was friends.
Right. Right.
That explains why I selected you as my friend, why I called you my best friend, my BFF, like my cousin. We had we can, I mean, like, you like, that's my sister, that's my family.
Right.
It was something that you felt like, if, and it's funny because
Familiar spirits, like you said, yeah. You don't
have
even
you,
know it.
have you ever had a friend you like, she get me, she understand me,
Right.
even when my family don't get me? Could it be that the pain that you're going through,
Right.
right?
The same. The same
Do
pain.
you get me or do you get the spirit? Do you get me or do you get the pain? Do
Right.
you get me or do you get the hurt? Like, what part of me are you identifying with,
Mm.
and what's connecting us to where we can't let go?
Mm.
And so I would highly recommend that everybody watching, that you take time to begin to evaluate your relationships. And if they're not healthy, could it be that something in you is not healthy?
Mm.
And here's the thing, people be like, find out what you need. Like, I've had people who have tried to play the victim, and here's what I say: you cannot play victim when you volunteered.
Ah,
Okay,
I like that.
find out why you're selecting the friends and who you are in the friendships and why. So if you're saying all my friends are, they don't have good credit, they not responsible, they don't have no extra money, they live in paycheck to paycheck, is it because you have friends that you need to feel like you're better than?
Mm.
And so you find people that you can help? Could it be that you need to feel needed or accepted or approval?
Right.
And so I want you to, in your time, begin to look at your friendships and ask yourself, who am I friends with and why am I friends with them? Valerie, can you identify any type of relationship that you were in, and though it wasn't healthy, it fulfilled a need for you?
Mm. I think the so here's the thing. When I look back as far as friendships,
Yes.
it is challenging for me to identify because I feel like they were healthy and I was able to identify when they weren't. If that makes sense, like I was
Okay.
able to say like, look, okay, something, we
Something
just
ain't
not
right.
right, something ain't right. I so again in my marriage, and that's the biggest that was the biggest challenge for me. I believe for me it was I guess codependency,
Okay.
or wanting to be a rescuer.
Okay.
Um, I think as a helper,
Hmm.
as a woman, we make that excuse or we say, you know, these things are good. This is not right, but I can help him with that, right? Or I can
Mm.
help her with that, and that's like I believe that's the rescuer in us, right? Or the codependent. Because as a child, I think I probably wanted to rescue my mom from the relationship, but I couldn't.
That's good.
And so you grow up and so the person that you're with kind of has the same going through the same things that maybe your father did or your mother, and so you survive that. So as an adult I can survive this, and as a matter of fact I can help them get over whatever they're going through, but it's definitely not the truth. Because depending on who you are, like it's my heart, it's my nature, it's who I am. But sometimes in the relationship, people take advantage of that. And
Yes.
the reality is you can't help anybody but yourself.
No,
You
that
have to
is
rescue
good.
yourself.
You have to. And isn't it funny that we look to rescue someone else? We look to rescue people and then look for someone to rescue us. Like, we become the very thing we're looking for. Like, if I
Right.
have the ability to rescue other people, why haven't I rescued myself?
Right.
Right? Like, if I know how to do it, I know it works. Why is it that I'm going looking for what I need and
Right.
then mad when no one provides it to me?
Right.
Like,
How's that work?
it's
It's really deep, and again it's healing, it's healing. Like I don't there's not enough healing. We there's always a need. No matter what we
mm,
say, no matter I feel like no matter what relationship we're in, there's always healing
it's
and looking
always.
inward.
Whew. And that emotional, we talked about so we talked about it in the homes, we talked about it in like the schools and friendships, and we touched on it a little about it in the workplace.
Right.
Um, and in the workplace, we see it so often,
Right.
right?
Right.
And people are afraid, maybe because they feel like my job is tied to it.
Right.
So I kind of want to, I'm going to talk briefly about it, and then I'm going to have you jump in. Because
Okay.
as we were talking earlier, and you were talking about like why people don't leave the relationship when it's domestic abuse, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole lot of things tied to it.
Right.
And we have to understand that it's happened over a period of time, right? And it started off gradually, and then it's kind of like, how did I get here? And
Right.
so when we say, how did I get here as a woman, give me some hearts if you can identify what I'm getting ready to say. I have been like, I was small, like real small, like my whole childhood, early adulthood, right? And so I can remember going from like a 5'6" junior to a 7'8" in my adult, right? And then it was like, I'm not gonna get no bigger than this, right? And I'm gonna try to get back to my 5'6". And before I knew, I went from a 7'8" to a 9'10". And I was like, how did I get here? And it's
Mm.
because we ignored all the warning signs. And
Mm-hmm.
if we don't do something different, it's easy to go from one extreme to another extreme, especially when we don't have any boundaries,
Right.
or to say, this is all I'm going to tolerate, right? And
Right.
when it gets here, I'm out of it. And so it's easy to judge someone and say, why would they stay in that relationship? I would never. I would never. Be careful what you say you'll never do.
Right. Right.
But if you've been in an abusive relationship, right? And I say abusive, I drop the word domestic because I have been in a corporate abusive relationship where I'm like, well, because of the money, because of the benefits, because of my title, because of my position, I'm staying for retirement. But who's to say that this is not going to kill me before I get to retirement?
Mm.
Right? Who said the position is not going to be eliminated? And to think that we're staying in something because we're looking for the reward.
Mm.
And so, in that, when it became like it's time for me to walk away, and it's kind of like, well, that's my income, that's my benefits,
Right.
that's my identity, that's my security, that's my retirement. All of these things is locked into this job, right? And so I want you to understand that when someone is in a abusive relationship, no matter what type of relationship it is, that relationship, it represents more than that relationship. So for a woman who is married to somebody, it's her identity, it's her security, it's her protection, it's her finances, it's all of it's her children father, it's all of these things tied. And it's kind of like, well, how can I ever walk away? And the
Mm.
belief that I had at the job was, well, I'll never find another job that pays as well as this. That's not true. And I'm only saying that because how many people have said, I'll never find another friend like this. I'll never find another man like this. I'll never find another spouse like this. It's the story that we tell to stay in a relationship that is not healthy.
Right. Right.
Oh, great question. Valerie, what if you are the emotional need yourself? So I'm gonna have you. So the emotional need to yourself. So Valerie, can you address that for someone who's saying, I don't have a need. I have a knee in my neck, but it belongs to me.
Okay. Okay. So if I don't know if you can maybe elaborate a little more, but the if you're the emotional need in yourself,
They said that they said in yourself.
right? In your relationship with yourself, very emotional. I'm thinking that's what she means or he means.
You can start with that, and then if it's not, I'll have them
Okay.
post it
Okay.
more details.
Okay. And I can only speak from my experience. I was very emotional, and I don't know which angle you're coming from, but I was very emotional. And for me, emotional, I cried all the time, was always crying. As
Okay.
I got into my marriage, I was crying and running off of
Mm-hmm.
my emotions, running away, not dealing with it, running away. And so what God had to show me was I had to sit and rest and again heal,
Mm-hmm.
because my emotions kept me running and my emotions kept me from my truth.
Yep. Yes,
Right.
exactly. Run away from your own emotions. Go.
Right. And I had to deal with it, is what I'm like. You have to deal with it. Um, for me, specifically, dealing with it was I had to say to myself, I am not my mother, because my mother ran from the marriage, emotions, emotions. Because the reality is, I feel like we create, like our thoughts create our lives, right?
Yes.
So I knew where God brought me from. So then it was up to me to say, well, I'm not repeating that. This is who I am currently. And
Mm-hmm.
the Valerie that I am today, I am strong, I am power, I am capable, I am able, I can, I will, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anything that is positive. And I had to sit with that and I had to endure some things. But what God showed me was, you don't move unless I tell you. You don't move with your emotions. Your emotions will have you all over the place in your thoughts, in your physical activity.
Mm-hmm.
And I share this because, again, I'm transparent. I said it earlier, but when I divorced and then decided to come back, I said, I'm coming back vulnerable and I'm coming back with more faith. But what I am not going to do is, when we have an argument, Valerie's not going to pack up and run away. Valerie's not going to pack up her kids and run away, because that's what Valerie was doing. I
Okay.
had to sit in my emotions and allow God to heal me. That's my
Mm.
story. It may not be your story because I don't know your story, but for me, when I did that, I knew that I was owning my truth, and I knew that I was creating the atmosphere. Like, my emotions had to become settled. And just because you
Mm.
have a disagreement, just because you have an argument, just because there are some familiar spirits that come up, it does
Yeah.
not mean that Valerie has to pack up and run.
Yes.
Yes, the truth shall set you free. Absolutely.
Right.
And my truth was, I was emotionally damaged.
Mm. That's good. I'm gonna be transparent. So I called Valerie about 2 o'clock today, and I was like, Valerie, I am emotional. I keep getting news after news after news, and I'm angry and frustrated by the number of people that I know that are now saying that they've been a victim of some type of abuse. And so, for the person who asked the question, um, I would ask that you go a little deeper. So, for me, when I became emotional, um, the thing was, I became frustrated. I became angry with something that was going on. And a lot of times there's something going on with this information, with this resource, this knowledge, we don't know what to do with it. And so when we learn how to take it and how to educate and empower other people, it puts us in a place of position and it allows us to shift our emotions. A lot of times our emotion makes us feel stuck, as if we can't move forward and we can't get ahead.
Right.
And so, though I can't help the people who have already experienced abuse, I can assist them in their healing process. But I can also be an advocate and begin to educate other people on what it is and then what resources are out there for them to step into it. And so when you say that I am, go deeper, right? With what is this part of my assignment? Is this part of my purpose? Is this what I was created to do? Because if you can go through the process and document it, you can teach someone else what it is that you're going through. So please feel free to. I'm going to post my information. Val's going to post her information so that you can reach out. I would love to do a strategy session. You can also reach out to Valerie so we can go deeper about why the knee is in your neck, right? Does it make you feel safe? Are you holding on to guilt? Are you holding on to shame? Are you holding on to a story that no longer serves you? Is there a benefit for it, right? Because oftentimes people hold on to stuff because it gives them something. And to let go of the story would mean that I have to let go of all the benefits that's tied to it. And so I knew there was a period of time where people were on AFDC. And with it, you could go to school, you could get food stamps, you could get Medi-Cal, you could get low income, you could get free daycare. It had all of these benefits. And so people are like, well, I'm not getting, why would I get off? Right? Because there's no way I would make this amount of money and be able to afford what I have now. And
Right.
though I want better, I'm afraid to let go of what I have. And so that's in a job, that's in a position. Never get so comfortable that you can't let go. And never trust anything more than you trust God.
Amen. That's truth. That's truth. It's
Valerie,
it's it's the belief. It's our belief for ourselves. We have to shift it.
so Valerie, because you went through the process, right?
Correct.
What are some things that they can do for the person who is on now, or maybe will be watching the replay, when they have their own knee stuck in their neck, right? And they've identified what type of knee it is. What are some things that they can do to either one, remove the knee, or at least begin to remove the pressure of the knee on their neck?
Great question. No, because again, for me, I feel like everyone's story is their story, right? Everyone has an individual story. Honestly, again, you have to recognize, as the person did, and my apologies, I didn't get her or his name, but recognizing that there's an emotional need, or some type of need on your neck, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
recognizing that that's your truth. So this is what it is. Now, how am I going to heal? Because it all comes back to healing.
Mm,
It all comes back to healing. I journal. I still journal.
okay.
I believe that that is therapeutic. Um, I did seek a therapist probably once or twice. That was
Okay.
not for me. That may be for someone else. Um, Talking to someone, as I stated, someone that you trust,
Okay.
um, and truly taking the time to do the work, because you can go seek help from someone. You can
Yeah.
join a group, right? Because there are plenty of groups out there that deal with people who are in abusive relationships. But if you're not going to do the work, you will never heal.
Let's talk about healing. Because there's so many different types of healing. So you referring to physical healing, emotional healing? Um, what type of healing are you referring to?
I believe that it's emotional healing, but obviously, if you're in an abusive relationship, it's physical healing, right?
Yes.
Spiritual healing, because there are people, and I always say this, I don't, and I don't mean it harshly, but I don't care what you believe, but you need to believe in something. You need to have your anchor in something
Yes.
spiritual, spiritual healing, because whatever religion you choose to believe, most of the religions are speaking life, right? To make you a better person.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to believe in something and believe better for yourself, because again, it's our thoughts.
Yes.
I remember feeling so depressed, crying, snotting all the time, but knowing that things had to change.
Yes.
So there's spirit, there's healing all across. There's healing physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, but you have to sit down and you have to take the time out to get still and to get quiet to see what God is saying to you, because what God told me again was journaling, but God may not be telling you that,
Mm,
because everyone has a different path.
that is good.
Journaling really saved my life, and I recommend it to women and men, but again, it may not be for everyone. I'm not the type of person, like going to the groups. That I didn't like that. I didn't care about going to see a therapist, because it just didn't work for me.
Okay.
but journaling worked for me, and reading my Bible, and understanding what that meant for me. But I also read plenty of other things spiritual, because if it's speaking to me being a better person, then I took that, and I had to see myself differently than my current situation at the time. Like,
Yeah,
you got to see what you don't see, faith.
that's good. And as you talk about that, Valley, one thing that I'm sorry, I had to get my charger because we're low. One thing I thought
That's
about was um, you have to listen to your body to see what your body needs and what it's looking
right.
for.
Right.
And so for me, what has saved me is walking.
Yes.
Um, and I was walking, and I was just walking, right? And then I started doing trails. And I remember the first trail I did and what came up inside of me, um, I wasn't comfortable. And I wasn't comfortable because I didn't know where it was going to lead to. I didn't know how long it was. I didn't know what I was going to come in contact with. And I didn't know if I was going to ever be on it by myself. And
Mm.
as I started going deeper, I realized it was life. And as I started walking, the fear or being uncomfortable, it became a place of curiosity.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
what I realized is that on this level, I would meet people that I wouldn't meet on the level that I was at. And I realized that because it was a trail, it meant that someone had already been here before. And I knew that I couldn't get lost as long as I was on a trail. And I knew that at any given time, all I had to do was turn around if I got tired. I also realized that there would be times where I'd be walking by myself, and there would be times that I would come in contact with somebody,
Right.
but I was never alone. And what I realized is that in life, we have to stay on the path, the trail that God has for us.
Yes.
And I remember being on this other trail, and I remember becoming very uncomfortable. And I was in a place where I felt like I was halfway, and it was becoming steeper and it was uncomfortable. And in order for me to continue to go up, I would have to change my position to balance and to make up for what my shoes was not capable or prepared to do, because they
Yeah.
was walking shoes, not hiking shoes. But to go back down meant that I could slide, fall, and risk it. And so I'm between the top and the bottom. And I had to make a decision. Do I go back where I started from, or do I
Mhm.
continue? And I
Mm.
remember getting to another place and it became even more uncomfortable because it's like now I'm in the middle of nowhere. And I remember saying, there's no one I can call
Mm.
because I don't know where I am. And nobody I know has ever been where I am.
That's
So
good.
they could not walk me through the process. And there was no one that I had come in contact with. And as I continued to walk, I got to a place where I finally came in contact with somebody. It was at that time I could now answer my questions. I
That's
can
good.
now ask my questions. The reason why is this person had been on the trail before. This person knew where the trail was going, and this person could prepare me for what was ahead of me.
Mm.
And I remember saying, how do I get out of here and where will it lead me to? And so as we continue to walk, she said, if you go down this way, it'll lead you over by the park on the other side. And I said, well, I want to keep going because now I'm curious.
Right.
And so we kept walking. She said, well, if you go down this way, it'll lead you. And I said, but now I'm more curious. And she says, well, this is getting ready to take you into the property, right? And I said, well, is it private property? And because if it's not private property, I want to continue. And I'm saying all of that to say I would have never met this lady. I would
Mm.
have never had this conversation. I would have never been able to deal with it. And what I realized is if I ever wanted to do it again, I knew who I could take and who I couldn't take. Because I knew what they were physically, mentally, and emotionally capable of doing.
Ah.
And I knew how to walk them through the process. I knew how to prepare for it. And most importantly, I knew I could do it. And so when you go through the process, you
Mm.
got to deal with what comes up on the inside of you.
Right. Right.
And you got to understand that it's not until you finish this, right? Can I walk someone else down this road, this path? And though I don't know anybody who has done it as of today, I'll meet somebody on my way when I need to. And when I get to that place, wherever I am emotionally, mentally, physically, financially, spiritually, I can ask the person who is qualified to give me an answer.
Yes.
We are asking the wrong people the wrong questions,
That's good. Yeah.
right? We're asking people who have never been in an abusive relationship how to get out of one. We're
Mhm.
asking people who have no idea about being emotionally healthy how to become healthy. And we're so afraid of leaving what we know we can't grow.
Mm. 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 That's
So I
it.
want you to, so I said all that to say, for Valerie, hers is journaling, writing, getting it out, right? And I do that. But for me, it's walking. It's walking and connecting with nature and getting out of my head and into my heart and listening to my body when I'm walking on. Do you want to do something challenging? Do you want to do something fun? Do you want to do something adventurous? Like, what do you want to do on today? Like, what is the purpose? What does your body need for you to give it? And so listen to your body,
Yes.
listen to what it wants, and give it what it needs. Because yours may be swimming, it may be hiking, it may be
Mhm.
bike riding, it may be poetry, it may be painting, it may be
Yes.
dancing. It, it's a number of things.
This is good.
So
You.
listen to your body.
Mhm.
And when we talk about emotions, right? What have you learned that you're willing to go back and teach someone else? So all of this started because I was angry. And I was angry because of what was going on in the world. And then I became more angry because I'm like, we are in an uproar about one person knee in someone else's neck. And there's all these areas in our lives where knees have been in our neck. And because no one has identified it, no one is doing anything about it. And we can't remove it until we know where that it exists. And so, with whatever emotions you have, if you go through the healing process, and I'm gonna say this with confidence, when you go through the healing process, and I'm not saying don't get your education, don't get your degree, but I've been through some things that can't nobody do what I do, and I don't care what type of paper you have on your desk.
Amen.
And I'm not discrediting a piece of paper where they may know what's on page 78. I know what happens on day 2 and on day 3. Get your education, but your experience, your knowledge, and
Yeah.
knowing what you went through and how to get somebody else through it, it will outweigh a piece of paper any day.
Yes.
Because if I have a child that's on dope, I I could go to a therapist, but I'd rather sit with someone that says I was on dope and this is how I got off of it.
Hmm.
This is the process. This is what they're dealing with. This is what triggers them. I want that information. I want someone to say, I need you to sit and understand on a deeper level what's going on and what triggers them. Can't no book tell me that and walk me through the process. So, whatever you're going through, if you've made it to the other side, you are an expert. You
Yes.
are an, I said you are an expert because you know something that a book cannot teach.
Yes. Yes.
Don't disqualify yourself based off what someone else is looking for. Our creators, we are original. Just because it's not being done does not mean that you cannot speak it into existence.
That's
It's
it.
time out trying to be like this coach, trying to be like this speaker, trying to be like this author, trying to be like this. If everybody was the same, what would be the need for you?
Yes. Hmm.
So what? whatever you went through in life or are going through, get yourself together. Teach someone the process and make a difference. Take your emotions and allow it to empower you to make a difference. Make it work for you.
Yeah.
Because nothing that I've gone through has been in vain.
Mm.
Valerie, let's. I was
Ah,
looking at the time. I don't know
you,
what time
you
it is.
look. That's it. Hey, you preached.
No, no,
No,
no,
that was
no, 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 no.
that was
That is
good.
commercial. No, no, no. I need you. I need you. I need you, Valerie. From everything that you've seen as a kid into your adulthood and where you are now, I need for you to tell us how you were able to take all of that and create a business
Mm,
based off your story, your pain, and everything that you went through, and what makes you different than the next coach.
mm, amen. Well, I always knew from early on that there was something greater. And I've always said that. I've always felt God's hand upon my life. And I am in this world. That was one of my favorite scriptures, being in the world, not of the world. So if I'm in the world, not of the world, that means I'm not going to do the things that everybody else does. I'm not going to do it the same way. There's
Right.
something different about me. There's something different about everyone on this call, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we are fearfully and wonderfully made. We are unique. We are created in God's image. When I think about the word faith, faith is being sure of what I hope for and certain of what I do not yet see. I say that all the time because I could be somewhere in a temporary situation, but that doesn't mean it's going to be forever because it's
Right.
temporary, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
understood early on that the trials and the tribulations that I was facing just came to make me a better person. So when you say those things and you believe them for your
Yes.
life, then you should see some fruit on your tree. So the more that I believed it, the more that I spoke it, the more that I seen what I didn't see, the more my life changed. Because again, our thoughts create our life. That's what it is. And I'll say this, being transparent, I was the type for a while that is not people pleasing, but I was waiting for approval from other people. But I don't need approval from anyone to do what God has called me to do because I'm a child of God. I
Yes.
don't have to wait for somebody to tell me now is the time. I just need to listen to the voice on the inside of me because I got to trust my truth, right? My
Mm-hmm.
truth. I can't
Woo.
wait for nobody to tell me. And so I thank God for being in a season of going to higher heights and deeper depths because I believe it for myself. Because people can come to me all day long and say, Valerie, that was great. You encouraged me. Valerie, this, Valerie, that. But I can't get my head big. I got to believe something for my
Mm.
relationship, right? I believe right now, those who are here to serve me, and those who are not will fall off. And I'm okay with that. And this is just on my heart because again, I don't know the person's name, but someone did put something about being vulnerable. So for
Okay.
me, being vulnerable meaning I am here flat-footed with my arms out. This is Valerie. This is who I am, right? This
Mm-hmm.
is all of me. So I'm in a place right now. I don't know how you're going to do it, God. I don't know what you're going to do, but I know it's going to be good. And I say, God,
Yes.
I give you permission to blow my mind. And so, with that being said, there may be times when I may be triggered. That's okay because guess what? That just means that there's some things unprocessed. Some things still in me that need to be healed, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. I'm okay with that because I belong to God. Have your way with
Mm.
me. Use me for your purpose and your glory. That is why I am here.
Yes.
And
And
my
when you
my story ain't my story. This my story's not
yes,
my story. Your story's not your story. We are here to make a difference in this
yes,
world. We are here to impact and ignite and just set some things on fire in a spiritual way, right? Like that's
yes,
why we are here. When you understand that, I believe things just start snowballing, like things just start happening. it's like, oh God, synchrony and harmony and so many things are coming together. It's like God's perfect order. And even as I'm right here right now on Periscope with Latanya, even as she stated, I was friends with her sister. Like me and her sister used to hang out, right? And
Right.
so who knew that Latanya and I would cross paths on this journey as adults?
Right.
Like who knew that?
When you said unresolved, and typically we use the word unresolved, but today from this day forth, I'm gonna try to be conscious of, instead of saying unresolved, I'm gonna say incomplete assignments,
Right, right.
right? Because it's part of our assignment, it's part of what we're going through. And it's funny because things lay dormant until they're woke up
Oh yeah.
and it's needed, right?
Yep, yep.
And so there's some things that's in us that we in laid aside, we forgot about. And
Right,
God is saying that person is going to wake up what's been asleep inside of you because your assignment is incomplete.
right, right.
There's something for us to do.
Right. There's something, there's more. You got to go harder, you got to go deeper. And even as I was transparent, that was one of the reasons why I know that's why I had to come back. That's part of my assignment. It
Yeah.
is what it is.
But
That's where I say being vulnerable and having faith. I know that God has something bigger. Now, and be careful, and I share this because there are people that may mean to give you sound advice, but you have to be careful in allowing people to speak certain things of your life. I remember someone being afraid for my life. And I said, that's not what God says. Like, I'm not dying. What are you talking about? I could be in this type of relationship, but that's not the call in my life. You know what I'm saying? And I had to rebuke those thoughts because those
mhm,
thoughts were not for my life. Those were your thoughts over maybe somebody else's, but those are not the thoughts that God has for me, right?
mhm.
So being careful of allowing other people's thoughts and words, like you can't prophesy that over me. you know, God's word says, "For I know the plans that I have for you, plans to
Yes,
prosper you, plans not to harm you, plans to give you hope for a future." So you have to really be careful. And again, it's your thoughts.
yes,
It's your thoughts. And
yes,
having a vision bigger than what you see. Because even as we are right here, right now, we don't really know, right? Because God's thoughts are greater than our thoughts, his ways greater than our ways. So we don't really know how God is going to do what God is going to do, but we know it's going to be good because you brought me this far and you're going to keep on bringing me. That's just how I see it.
look, I'm excited, and I'm excited because I remember this. I don't remember the scripture verbatim, but I remember studying it, and it's a scripture that talks about that we are sealed.
Mm,
And so, as you're talking, it's important that we know that we are sealed by God, right? And
right.
so, I'm a little country girl, right? I stayed with my grandmother for 1 year, and I promise you, I act like I was born and raised in the country. And so, when I started to study the whole world, the word seal, right? So it's not like a seal that we put on an envelope, it's sealed, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
best way that I could describe it was my experience that I had with my grandparents and understanding canning, right? So when you can, you use mason jars. And so when you use mason jars, they clean them, they steam them in hot water, and then they do the lids. So
Okay.
when you put the mason jar on there, there's a seal,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And they can pop the top of it and they can tell if the seal has been broken.
Okay.
So we was deep in the country, like there ain't no stores there at all. So my grandmother used to do pickles and she used to do like these peaches and they were very firm and sweet. So as a little girl, because we in the country, when I wanted something sweet, I would sneak in the room and I would open it and I would eat from it, right? And so eventually she would know because when she would go in there, she'd be like, it's not closed, blah, 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 right? And I played dumb like I didn't know what was going on. I'm sure she did. But here's what the Spirit of God revealed to me. First of all, it was obvious that the seal had been broken. But the moment I broke the seal, I broke the protection.
Mm,
And at that time, anything could get in and anything could get out.
mm.
The seal had been broken. And once that seal is broken, there's no way to reseal it and for it to be sealed. That's why when they only use one time. It's important that once God has his seal on us, we don't allow anyone to break the seal, because once the seal is broken, anything could get in and anything could get out. And at that point, I put my own life in danger because I didn't know what had been in there and what was coming out. At that time, buds, it changes everything because it's not protected.
Right.
And I didn't understand that I had broke the protection. And that I had now allowed anything to get in and out of it because the seal had been broken. But my grandmother knew, because she had canned it, that when I canned it, I made sure it was protected and I can hit the top of it and know that the seal has been broken. I don't care how tight you tighten it. It's a sound, a noise that it makes.
Yes.
And anybody that cans, they only use it one time. It's only used one time. And once you break that seal, like, have you ever had anything and it wasn't sealed? Even a soda, when you break the seal, when you first break it, it gives you that. Right. But once that seal is broken, you don't get it anymore. Right. And once the air gets in it and it begins to get flat, it no longer has that. That's good. And if it does it to a soda, what happens to us as people of God when we allow the seal to be broken and then go back into the presence of God, and there's something inside of us and God says, that wasn't in there when I sealed you. I can tell the seal's been broken. Like, I sealed it. I sealed it. Yes. And so it's important that we don't allow anything to break our seal. What God has placed on the inside of us, what God has called and told us to do. If God says, Valerie, this is what I want you to do in this season, and I seal it, who am I to unseal it, put my thoughts, my vision, my fear inside of you and try to close it back up? So I had to throw that out. That was a bonus. Drop the mic. Has your seal been broken? Yes. And if yes, by who? And how do we go back in the presence of God and try to convince God that the seal hasn't been broken? And he's looking and saying, none of this stuff was inside of you. You've allowed things in you, and then you closed it back in there, and you began to mesh and intertwine with stuff that was never supposed to be inside of you. That's good. And when things begin to mix, you can't always separate it. You can't take it back out. You can't undo what's been done. You got to go back to God. If you allow anything to break your seal, you can't go to man. You've got to go to God. Get out of me what doesn't belong in me and seal me, God. Protect me over again. Yes. That's truth. That's truth. That is truth. I think about a kid, an innocent kid, and a parent has broken the seal. And now all of this stuff is in the child because you broke the protection when you got out of the will of God. Jesus. What have we allowed in our family by the words of our mouth? What seeds have we planted by the words of our mouth? Right. What seeds have we watered by the words of our mouth? Go back. Go back. Go back. If you've experienced anything outside the will of God and it's caused you to be anything other than what God has created you to be, because you had to survive, your seal been broken.
Yes.
Go back to God.
That's it.
Because even though I do inner work, there's some spiritual work that you and God got to do.
Yes.
Because God knows who He created you to be. And so we want to, Valerie, do you have any last words before we close out? Because we get excited and we've been in a whole nother.
I honestly don't. I am not gonna lie. I am listening to you, and it is good. It is good. It is good, and it was necessary. I think you sealed that. It was good. Yes, powerful. Absolutely. Absolutely.
We want to thank you guys for joining us on tonight.
Yes.
And if you could please share um, with your people on Periscope, we're going to share it on Facebook. We really want people to begin to identify the need that's in their neck.
Yes.
And we're here to support you through the process. Valerie has posted her information. If you can post it again, Valerie, I'm
Yeah.
going to post my information to my website. You can go on there under book. You can do a strategy section that's free, that we will walk you through the process, that we will help you not only identify the need that's on your neck, but begin to remove it so that you can walk in freedom and be who God created you to be and
Yeah.
not who you had to become to survive this. Okay, we'll
Yeah.
be back on next week. We'll be talking more about other needs. If there's any subject that you want us to cover, please post it in the comments. Reach out to me on Facebook. Also, so reach out to me on Facebook. Post your questions. Also, go back through and look at the ones we've already done. Watch when you're watching the replay. Send your hearts. Post your comments. We love you. Have a blessed evening,
Yes.
and we'll see you guys on next week. Good
God
night.
bless. Thank you. Love you all.